History has favorites. It crowns some monsters with immortality, polishing their names until they gleam in museum gift shops and late-night documentaries. Others, equally brutal, sometimes far more so, are left to rot in the footnotes, whispered only in the languages of the people they scarred. Take this imbalance, Jack the Ripper, a ghost in Victorian London, officially linked to 5 murders, with speculation stretching that number to 11. Never caught, never named, never proven, and yet his shadow stretches across the world. Now, place beside him Raya and Sakina, 2 sisters in Alexandria, active barely 30 years later, responsible for 17 confirmed murders, possibly more, caught, tried, and executed. Their crimes were intimate, methodical, repetitive. Their victims vanished into the floors of their homes. Their story ended not in mystery, but on the gallows, and yet, outside Egypt and parts of the Arab world, their names barely ring a bell. This is not a story about numbers. It's a story about whose violence becomes legend and whose violence becomes inconvenient. Now, let's remove the floor tiles. Let's exhume a buried chapter, not to glorify it, but to understand how crime, power, colonialism, and memory collide. To properly understand Raya and Sakina, you must first understand Alexandria between 1915 and 1925. This was not the postcard Alexandria of poetry and sea breeze. This was a city under strain, economically suffocated, socially fragmented, politically watched. Egypt was under British colonial control. World War I had turned the country into a military logistics hub. British troops flooded the city. Prices soared, food grew scarce, and jobs vanished. The poor paid the price of an empire's war. Women were among the most vulnerable. Many were widowed, many displaced, many pushed into informal labor, domestic work, street vending, and ultimately, many resorted to sex work. Respectability became a luxury item. It is in this atmosphere, thick with desperation and surveillance, that Raya and Sakina emerged. Raya and Sakina bint Ali were sisters from Upper Egypt, the Said in particular, who drifted north like so many others, chasing survival in Alexandria. At the time of their nefarious exploits, they were between the ages of 40 and 45. They were not aristocrats, they were not ideologues, they were not demons dropped from the sky. They were unlicensed brothel keepers, operating at the margins, in rented homes, catering to a clientele that included laborers, locals, and soldiers. Their husbands, Hasaballah Sa'id and Muhammad Abdul Al, both significantly younger than their wives by over 15 years, were part of their inner circle, as were 2 other men who served as enforcers. The sisters understood something crucial. In a city of displaced women, trust could be weaponized. Women trusted women, and Raya and Sakina knew how to utilize this concept of safety to the greatest effect. The victims were not random. Some were prostitutes, some were not. Some were acquaintances, some were strangers. What united them was vulnerability and gold. For the women of Egypt, gold jewelry was not decoration, it was insurance. In unstable times, women wore their savings around their necks and wrists. And for their targets, Raya and Sakina offered many things, at times companionship, shelter, and at others, the opportunity for work or the numbing effects of alcohol and hashish. They invited women into their various homes in the AlLabban district, a dense working-class neighborhood where people came and went without raising eyebrows. One of these many dens of danger was located just behind the district's police station. Once inside, the ritual repeated. The women were given drinks, often laced with a drug to dull resistance. The men would enter, hands would grip, a cloth would tighten around the mouth or neck. Asphyxiation. Quiet, efficient, no blood to explain. The jewelry was stripped, the bodies were buried beneath the floor tiles, and life continued above them. This was no chaotic violence. This was systematic predation.
قطيعة ما حدش بياكلها بالساهل. الولية وانا بنخنقها عضتني في ايدي. تاكلش عدوتها.
Over time, neighbors noticed something unsettling. Women were vanishing, entering random houses, never to be seen again. Raya and Sakina, meanwhile, seemed to be prospering. Gold appeared and was pawned. Money circulated. In a city where poverty was the rule, their sudden stability stood out. External people became unwillingly involved, such as the jeweler who was purchasing stolen items from the sisters. Yet, not enough evidence was available to accuse anyone. But there was enough to unsettle the atmosphere. Still, the victims remained invisible. Most were poor. Most were sex workers. Most had no one powerful asking questions. The quantity of missing women increased, and at the tipping point, the aggregate was too large to be passive about. 17 women, some missing for several months. Not a single pip or sighting to alleviate the fears. Until the ground itself spoke. The case cracked open not through confession, but through construction. While digging in one of the houses linked to the sisters, workers uncovered remains of an individual beneath the floor. Police descended on AlLabban with urgency. Initially, the sisters claimed ignorance of the situation. Yet, upon orders from the main public prosecutor of the district, house by house they searched. And what they found was damning. Women's clothing, jewelry traced to missing persons, and most notably, a jilbab, a woman's outer gown hidden among belongings that did not belong to the occupants. Floor tiles were lifted. More bodies surfaced. The pattern became undeniable. This was not a single murder. This was a killing operation. When Raya and Sakina were arrested, their first defense was strategic. They pointed to the men. They claimed ignorance. They framed themselves as bystanders, women trapped in violent male schemes. It was a plausible narrative. In a patriarchal society, it fits expectations. Men kill. Women are coerced. For a moment, the sisters hid behind this assumption. But evidence does not care about expectations. Witnesses spoke. Timelines aligned. Jewelry changed hands. And slowly, the truth surfaced. Uncomfortable and undeniable. Under interrogation, the story finally shifted. The sisters were not passive. They were recruiters. They selected the victims. They arranged the meetings. They controlled access to the houses. The men were the muscle. Raya and Sakina were the architects. Police records and testimonies painted a chilling picture. It was the sisters who identified women with gold. It was the sisters who gained their trust. It was the sisters who signaled when to strike. The illusion collapsed. This was not a male-led crime ring with female accessories. This was a female-led operation, rare, unsettling, and deeply threatening to social norms.
اتفضلوا. أهلا وسهلا، احنا زرنا النبي. أهلا.
I really do appreciate you taking the time and watching the Kandidi Chronicles. Please do join our community by subscribing so that you don't miss out on any content regarding the Arab and Muslim history, identity, and modern condition. And if you really do enjoy the channel week in and week out and would like to support us even further, please do join us at our YouTube membership program as well as on Patreon. Thanks again. Egypt recoiled, not only because of the number of murders, but because of who committed them. Women were supposed to be moral anchors, caregivers, victims. Raya and Sakina shattered that myth. Newspapers sensationalized the case. The sisters were portrayed as monsters, witches, aberrations. But beneath the moral panic lay another discomfort. Their crimes flourished in the cracks created by colonial poverty, social breakdown, and institutional neglect. They were not imported evil. They were homegrown, nurtured by conditions no one wanted to own. The trial moved swiftly. 17 murders, multiple locations, clear material gain. There was no mystery to savor, no puzzle to prolong. The verdict was death. Raya and Sakina were sentenced to hanging alongside their male accomplices. In December 1921, the sisters were executed, becoming the first women hanged in modern Egyptian history. No legend followed them, no unsolved riddle, just bodies, justice, and silence. So why does the world remember Jack and forget Raya and Sakina? Why do other contemporaneous female serial killers live on in infamy, such as Marion Cotton or Belle Guinness? Because mystery markets better than certainty. Because empire controls narrative. Because crimes in London were printed in English and exported as spectacle. And because societies in the West actively engage with such evil and at times appreciate it. Because crimes in Alexandria were filed away as colonial pathology, and because their victims, poor women, were never meant to be remembered either. History, it turns out, has a class system of its own. I'm actually quite content that the world doesn't recognize Raya and Sakina, that their evil is limited to the Arab world. Why? Because they're an extreme case of being an outlier. There are no comparatives of such notoriousness in the early modern history in the region. Whereas in the West, we can observe the numerous top 10 or top 20 lists of evil women that are exclusively Eurocentric or American, appearing almost as claims to fame or accomplishment. Raya and Sakina were not symbols of resistance. They were not heroes. They were not misunderstood saints. They were criminals, shaped by their environment and colonial zeitgeist, but not excused by it. Their story does not tell us that colonialism creates virtue. It tells us that misery creates opportunity and predators adapt quickly. And it reminds us of something deeply uncomfortable. Evil does not announce itself with foreign accents. It does not wear a single religion, gender, or flag. Sometimes it speaks your language. Sometimes it looks like family. Sometimes it invites you inside and offers you something of comfort. And whether history remembers it or not has very little to do with the suffering it caused, and everything to do with who controlled the narrative.